Hello, this is Daryl Ehrlich with the Billings Gazette, and this is part of our Vietnam Voices series. Tonight I am joined, by the way, tonight is September 10th, 2015 at approximately 7 p.m., and I am joined in the studio today with Kurt Schulz. Kurt, you were in the Army from 1968 to 1971, but let's back up a second. Where were you before you were in the Army? Let's talk about that.
Well, I was born in Detroit.
Okay.
But my dad was in the Army Air Force and later the Army Air Corps, World War II, and he stayed in the reserves. So in 1950, he got called back to active duty.
Okay, he went to Korea.
No, actually I went to SAC.
Okay.
He flew B-47, flew B-36 bombers, then he flew B-47s.
Okay.
So we just started an odyssey. Until the time I joined the Army, I lived in a half a dozen or better states, did a tour in England.
Wow.
And we just kind of moved around.
Did you
Air Force brats?
Yeah, so you were an Air Force brat and you joined in 68. Did you did you join because your father, there was a legacy, or why did you join?
Because I was probably going to get drafted.
Okay.
I'd gone to a couple of colleges, and they had these funny rules about you should go to class, you should take tests.
All of us ran into that at one time or another.
I was a bridge champion,
right?
but they asked me not to return.
Oh, I understand.
And I kind of talked to my draft board, and they said, "Oh, don't make any plans for July." And I would have taken basic training, which I did in Fort Bliss, Texas.
Okay.
Fort Bliss, Texas in July is not a place you ever want to think about being. That's
hot?
El Paso, Texas.
Oh, so that's really hot and humid?
Yeah, right on the edge of the New Mexico desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would quit training when I got above 110.
It seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah. So in March, I made up my mind to might as well do it because I'd have a nowhere job for 3 months or 4 months before I got drafted.
So it was either enlist or be drafted?
Yeah, enlist or be drafted, and I figured, I'll enlist for something that I have a good chance of not getting shot at doing.
Okay, so what did you enlist for?
Well, I walked in the door to enlist for 35 millimeter still photography.
Okay.
And I just love photography, even though it carried a subheading of combat photographer. I was young and stupid. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Sitting there waiting for the recruiter, he had this big rack of everything you could be in the Army, and I saw this little pamphlet on military intelligence. I thought, ooh, that sounds kind of cool. I asked the recruiter about it, and he said, I can't tell you a thing about it. I'm not allowed to, which really got my interest. So 20 minutes later, I was talking to a counterintelligence agent across the building and literally being recruited into intelligence.
Okay.
So I ended up joining military intelligence. I was a intelligence coordinator.
What does that mean?
Basically, it's a clerk typist with a top secret security clearance that handles classifieds.
Okay. So did the glamour of the job, did it match what you were recruited for and what you did?
Well, the good thing about this agent, he said, I'm not going to give you any BS. I'm going to be out before you're in. And I get no points for doing anything, so he gave it to me straight, told me just what I would do. But about 95% of all the billets in the intelligence were civilian status.
Okay.
Which means Denver had a field office, Cheyenne, where I joined at, had a field office. The government pays you a whole bunch of money to go buy civilian clothes. You get an apartment. You're for all intents and purposes, you're a civilian.
Okay.
But you just get a government paycheck. And
that doesn't sound
a nice idea.
Yeah, you like that idea.
I love that idea.
Right. Did it go as planned?
No.
Okay.
The Army, in all their wisdom, there were 44 of us in our class. One was a whack, and she was barred from going to Vietnam because they weren't going to send women over there unless they were nurses at the time. And of the 43 possible R's, S's, and T's got assigned to Vietnam.
You had Schulz.
There I was. I was assigned to the 525 MI group.
Okay. So what did you think? Obviously, in '68, some of the folks that I've talked to, when they enlisted, couldn't find Vietnam on a map, but you had to know when you enlisted.
I knew enough about it ahead of time.
You're right. Did that worry you when R's, S's, and T's got called over? That
Yes, because the night before, the movie I saw at the base theater was The Green Berets. was not.
I'm sorry, I'm not to laugh.
It was not. I know. I still laugh about it too. I can't. Oh my God. I know it was just a movie, but
it's got to be based on something, right?
based on something.
Right. So you get the notice that you're going to go to Vietnam, and you're worried.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Not overly.
Okay. What? So then you, how long did you have before you kind of got the notice? What was your gap between?
Well, we got our orders the last week of school, then we were given a 2-week leave, and then we were on the airplane in Oakland.
Okay.
So basically, I had 3 weeks, hopefully to find my parents, because at the same time my dad got transferred from Cheyenne to California, March Air Force Base in Riverside.
Okay.
So until the day before I flew to California, I know my parents were in Riverside, but I had no phone number, no address, nothing.
And no Google.
No Google, no cell phones.
Right. So that sounds like a pretty stressful time. Here, you're going to go over to Vietnam, and you can't even find where your parents are. That's
or where you'll be living at for a couple of days or 2 weeks.
Yeah. What did you do during those 2 weeks, or what could you do?
Played golf, went to the swimming pool.
Okay.
Just kind of hung out with a couple of kids I knew over there, and ran sports cars up and down Big Bear Mountain.
Okay. So just try to do anything to have fun, and then
Anything I can do to have fun.
Okay. So tell me about shipping out. Where'd you ship out from again?
We shipped out of Oakland,
Okay.
Oakland Army, I guess replacement depot.
Okay.
Flew out of McCord Air Force Base.
Okay. Did you go to Alaska, then down,
No,
or
we flew the Hawaii route.
Okay.
When we landed in Hawaii, they wouldn't let us off the plane. Believe it or not.
I can see why, maybe.
Our next stop was Wake Island.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of Wake Island, but I think that 707 we were in dragged the wheels the first 100 yards through the surf, up the beach, and stood on the brakes just so we didn't go into the lagoon at the far end. It's a little postage stamp.
Yeah. I've heard.
Yeah. And they let us off the plane.
Okay. Because there's nowhere to go on Wake Island.
Wake Island. You know?
Right.
You got one terminal, 2 barracks, and an airstrip.
Right.
And the last stop was Clark Air Force Base, the Philippines.
Okay.
And of course, they didn't let us off the plane there either.
Right.
And then we landed at Tan Son Nhut, Saigon.
So give me your first impression of Tan Son Nhut when you got off the plane.
Well, it was hot.
Okay.
That, of course, you expected, hot and humid. And being an old service brat, looking around, I saw all the airplanes sitting around there, everything from, of course, there were no big bombers there because they flew out of Guam. But you had attack bombers and fighters and transports and helicopters. I'm an old airplane person, so I was looking around with that. The biggest impression is they loaded us all on these blue Air Force school buses, just like the yellow pearls you have running around here. Mm-hmm. And except all the wire, all the glass was there, but they had heavy wire, a lot heavier than chicken wire, very, very thick on all the windows. And you start looking around, you're going, oh. Then this guy comes on the bus, full combat gear. He's got a helmet, flak jacket, the M16, couple grenades, ammo hanging all over the place.
Right.
And he quickly announces, if this convoy is attacked, we have a spare bus to pick up survivors. And you went, what the hell did I get myself into?
So that was like,
that was the
wake-up call. Right, a guy saying we've got a spare bus to pick up survivors.
Survivors.
Right.
Yeah, and you just go, whoa. Not disabled,
Right.
And then we went to the repo, the 90th replacement. Most people went in there not knowing where they were going to go.
Okay.
They were just assigned by the good of the service. I had orders specifically for the 525.
Okay.
So I knew exactly where I would be going, and I would be out of there within 1 day.
Okay, so where was the 525 station?
Headquarters was in Saigon.
Okay.
We had 6 battalions. There were 6 what they call corps.
Yep.
I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps. And we had 1 battalion that serviced each of the corps.
Okay.
And so we had a very big old French villa compound down in somewhere in Saigon. And
Right.
they quickly lost me. The other people I came with got shipped out inside of 2 days, and a week later, I'm still filling sandbags and doing casual details. And I finally went up to this first sergeant. I said, "What is it? Do I spend my whole time here filling sandbags?"
Right.
And he looked at me like, "Who are you?"
Okay.
I told him, and they went, "Oh." Next thing I know, we had what they called tradescraft.
Okay.
So he asked me if I'd gone to tradescraft. I said, "No." So they ran me over there. Tradescraft is where the spooks, as we call them, that's where we make all our fake documents.
Okay.
So they quickly put this coat on, put this tie on, boom, you're now a civilian GS7. Okay, now take that off, put this uniform on, boom, okay, you're now a second lieutenant. So I had legitimate ID cards, government issued, making me either a GS7 civilian or a second lieutenant. And then they said, okay, you're going to go up to Da Nang, I Corps, 1st
Okay.
Battalion. You're a civilian. Wear civilian clothes, take your military IDs, put them away, stuff them under or whatever. You're now a GS7 civilian. So I went up to Da Nang as a civilian. And I got there at the time, our battalion in Da Nang had 7 buildings scattered around town that different teams lived in. Unfortunately, I got there just in time for a major outbreak of the VC shooting everything up. One of our we call it the beach house, it was abandoned because of the middle of a firefight. The supply hut had a armored personnel carrier blown up in front of it the night before, and it was still smoldering, so they had to stay away from that, and a few more. So everyone was running around the chicken with their head cut off. And this one officer comes out, and I try to report in. He looked at my paper and said, okay. And he said, well, where's your weapon? I said, I don't have one. Oh, he went ballistic. So I started yelling for people. So I rush over, and they issue me an M14 rifle, which I'd had in basic, and a .45 pistol and a flak jacket. And they said, oh, we don't have any helmets. Well, I guess it's better than nothing.
Right. Wow.
Oh, yeah. So they're running around. They quartered me what they call the joint team. There are we had two different types of intelligence teams in Vietnam. We had unilateral and bilateral. Unilateral, as the name suggests, we didn't let anyone know who we were. No information was shared directly with the Vietnamese government.
Okay.
Or any other foreign government. The bilateral teams had Vietnamese counterparts that they worked with.
Okay.
They were mostly counterintelligence, looking for spies in VC.
Okay.
So I was living with the joint team. And my first night, I'm sitting there having a nice cold beer, watching Bonanza rerun on TV.
So you can get reception.
Yeah. Well, no, they have Armed Forces Vietnam.
Okay.
They have pretty good TV over there.
Okay.
At least down in Da Nang. We later got it when I went up north, but it took a while. And I'm sitting there, and I heard this bang, bang, bang. And I looked out and walked out to the veranda, standing there, and I could watch these little red lights going up and down the road. I am so green, it's pathetic. I go, oh, well, what are those? And this captain who was there comes in and says, what are you doing? He throws me down, and he said, there's a firefight out there. Okay, get your weapon. I go, good. I have one magazine from my M14 with 19 rounds in it, and 3 magazines from my .45. There's 2 of us, him and me. We had about 10 seconds worth of fighting before they decided to come over our fence.
Right.
Luckily, they didn't.
You were watching a firefight
I'm
in
watching a
Tracers.
firefight up and down the street right in front of. There was a big eucalyptus tree just about 25, 30 feet away from me, just the other side of the road. And this one little guy would stick out behind it and fire a half a dozen rounds of it sounded like, later on I found out it was probably what we call the SKS carbine, because it wasn't fully automatic, but he'd wrap off 3 or 4 rounds and stick back there, and I'd watch him do that and watch him do that. And the captain said, don't you even think about shooting. He says, your job is, if they come over that fence, we go out the back door as quick as we possibly can. Because we were high-value targets, among other things. But
so your job was to get the hell out.
Get the hell out. I understand that during Tet in '68, we lost a couple people in the way because they shot out the front door when they should have been running out the back door, and they've never been found.
okay, so I want to unpack a few of these things. So you were going, you were there, and you didn't even realize a firefight when you saw one.
No, I had the only combat training we had, were quote unquote, was in basic.
Right.
And once I got to Fort Holabird, Maryland, which was what the intelligence school at the time, it was like going to a college campus.
Okay.
But we all wore the same uniform. There was military courtesy, but the formations was in the morning. We got roll call. We marched to class. We'd go into town. We didn't need a pass to go into town because we were right there at the edge of town, edge of Baltimore. You wanted to go 250 miles in a weekend, no problem. That was your limit, unless you were flying. Then you could go. I think it was 1,000 miles long. You had a return trip. They had guys who lived on the East Coast who'd go home every weekend. So
it was you just weren't not even trained on that.
No, not even trained.
When did you, at any point during that firefight, did you become scared? I mean, did the fear sink in?
30 seconds after the captain told me what was happening, I went from nice, dry, calm, collected, to sweat dripping off of me.
Huh.
Believe me, that was a really scary night.
Yeah.
And it went on for a couple hours.
Just the firefight back and
just
forth.
up and down the street until they finally moved in a platoon of, I'm not sure whether Marines or Army or Vietnamese or whatever, but a platoon came through and swept the area clean eventually. But this started probably at 10 o'clock at night, and that was 1, 2, 3, who knows. And at that time, we did have 5 guards that were hired to protect the compound. They put their rifles on it and went out the back door quickly. It's the first time the first round fired.
Wow.
So there were, for that time, it was just the 2 of us sitting in the house.
Wow. So when they issued you these 2 identities, is that pretty much standard if you're in military? So you weren't fazed by that, saying, now you're a civilian, boom, now you're a...
No.
This is how you...
I knew this is what was going to happen.
Okay. And when you're a civilian, so the captain knew you're with military intelligence, but ostensibly to someone just observing, you just look like a regular civilian.
You're a regular old civilian. I would go down, GS7 is the same rank as a second lieutenant. So I would go down the block, about four blocks, to the big officers club and drink beer, and played poker with a really nice Korean major who hated to lose.
So that bridge playing from that card playing from college did come into
cards.
Right. So so that was that was kind of one of your first welcomes into.
Yes.
What is it? What is a firefight in Vietnam? Besides just this red exchange, what does a firefight look like?
Well, that's what it is, a flash of light, and sometimes there's a red tracer, sometimes there isn't.
Okay.
A lot of times you just hear something whiz down the road, and as long as they're not aimed at me, I didn't care too much. But luckily nothing really popped into our compound.
What's a job? Give me an idea of what an assignment would be if you're a military intelligence. What's an average? Like, give me an example of a job in Vietnam.
What I did when I got transferred up to Quang Tri, I can go a little story. I pissed off the battalion XO executive officer. He called me a freaking hippie, and told the admin officer to get rid of me.
Wow.
So the next morning, I was on a helicopter to Quang Tri, which is right up by the DMZ, Marine Corps country. And that's why I spent the rest of my tour living with the Marines and working. And what I would do is, we had several agents who were undercover civilians. And here again, they were of course they were in their 30s, but they were still undercover as civilians working for different agencies over there. They had teams and they had networks, principal agents, and each principal agent would have 1 or 2 or more sub networks of assorted intelligence agents, and sometimes down 3 or 4 tiers. And they'd pass the information up to the U.S. guys, and they would write out the rough reports. They would bring them back to the compound on the base, and then I would process them.
Okay. I'd
type them up, mimeograph them, correlate everything, and then I would take one set over to the radio rig, so it could be sent to Saigon, Da Nang, and all places that they sent it to. And then I would take more hard copies and normally drive down to Quang Tri City and make a round of all the intelligence places, the Navy intelligence, the joint teams, the Air Force, and give them copies of everything we did and pick up anything they wanted to share with us.
Okay. So your job wasn't necessarily to decide whether it was good or bad
Nope.
information. You're just passing along all information.
I was just a clerk typist who put it together so it was all legible.
Okay.
And did all the filing and all the housekeeping chores and made sure every scrap of paper was burnt every day after we did everything. And
Was it interesting work?
yes, it was. It was pretty interesting. You look at some of these things. I remember we were tracking one of the North Vietnamese regiments from, I think, the 312 Division, something like that, or 24. I can't remember the number anymore. It's so many years. But we were tracking this regiment, and every so often they'd pop up over here, and we go, and I go, oh, hey, Major Mac, weren't they over? And so we could track. We'd have enough people out in the bush, mainly Montagnards and the farmers that would get the information from.
Right. Were you a freaking hippie?
No. No.
Is that so? You got kind of banished up to?
Yeah, I got banished.
Okay.
I got banished. I was told I was going to be a civilian until someone told me not to, and no one told me not to.
So you're a civilian.
I was a civilian there. So he called me a hippie because I was wearing civilian clothes in the Army. So.
What's the? But you were still doing the job you were trained to do.
That time I hadn't even started. I was just trying to find. They lost me for a week up in Da Nang also.
Okay. How'd they lose you again?
Well, they had all that stuff going on. I'm there every day trying to find something. They look at me and turn around and walk off. So until I pissed the XO off, no one even knew who I was. They found out real quick, and I was banished up to Quang Tri.
So what's Quang Tri? Give me a description of what Quang Tri is like.
Quang Tri was a Marine Corps combat base. It was carved out of a whole bunch of, well, I can explain to people the best, being around the Marines for a year. Marines have two different ways to find a base. They either turn a cat loose to find the world's biggest cat box full of sand, and that's the perfect place, or they turn a hog loose to go find a mud wallow. That's their other base. We had the sandbox. We had the cat box type base.
Okay.
The base straddled Highway 1, which was used to be the major north-south road. We were 12 miles from the DMZ. The base north of us, Dong Ha, was within artillery range of the DMZ, and every so often used to get shot at by Pistol Pete, which was dug in a cave on the north side of the Ben Hai River.
Okay.
We had an airstrip and 2 full regiments of Marines and CBs, big medical care, and a few Army units here and there. But it was just a big support base for the most part, 2/3 of the 3rd Marine Division.
Okay. Did you take? Were you back far enough behind lines were you getting picked at by the VC? And
Well, it wasn't that. We lived in what we called short round country.
okay.
The airstrip was to the east of us, and they shot the rockets off from the west of us.
Okay.
And they hated airplanes, so they used to always shoot for the airstrips.
Okay.
The year I was there, they never hit the airstrip once.
So they were bad shots?
Yeah, I think so. They used to drop them all around us. They never hit us direct, but they used to drop them close enough to rattle.
How do you achieve how do you be normal in an environment in which someone's going to always be dropping? You could get something dropped on you at any time.
Oh, yeah. What can you do about it?
Yeah.
After a while, you just kind of get, hey, normally if you miss if the first one misses you, you'll be in the bunker.
Okay.
And building bunkers were passions. Our final bunker had 6 feet of sand on the roof, 5 foot thick walls, and blast shields on both ends.
Okay.
For which we kept 2 cases of sea rations, a case of grenades, and 4 cases of beer.
Well, those sound like good priorities.
Yeah. Well,
Was there any good beer in Vietnam?
no. Well, American beer, we got, once in a while you get Budweiser, but
Okay.
normally you had what we call the Rusty Tops.
Okay.
You had Carling's Black Label, Schlitz, and sometimes some Falstaff.
Okay. So no,
No.
not great.
Yeah.
Would it an average? So is an average day just receiving those reports? Do you have to do a lot of in the field, or do they come to you, or how does that?
They have to come to me. I can't do a thing until it hits my desk.
Okay.
So I'd come in, most mornings I'd go in, I'd sweep the office, and after, I started off working with just a captain. I was the only enlisted person there. They had a captain. Everyone else in the team was undercover as a civilian, or a couple were undercover as lieutenants.
Okay.
So.
Did you all know in the office that each other were undercover? Like, or what did you? Okay.
Yeah, they'd come in and see me, but
Okay.
they didn't live with us.
Okay.
The captain and I lived in the compound.
Okay. It's interesting. Yeah. That double life, that you look like a civilian, but yet you're
By then I was military.
Okay.
I was back wearing my Army uniform.
Okay. And so you're compiling these, and every day you had to burn the reports?
Anything that had anything to do with classified had to be burnt and ashes scattered. And sometimes they didn't come in for a week. So
Okay.
for a week I'd sit around and sweep the office, and after the major came up and we became a full-fledged detachment, he'd say, "You look bored, go see what's in the PX." So I drive over the PX.
Was it boring?
And sometimes, yes.
What was an exciting day like?
Maybe the time that we got what we called a doomsday report.
Okay. What's that?
That means there is an imminent attack on an American unit, normally a big base like Quang Tri or Dong Ha, or one of the large outposts, normally rockets, mortars, that kind of stuff. Not the infantry frontal assault. We knew they didn't have that where I was because there's too much open ground. And we got the report in late in the day. We had to get it up to 3rd headquarters, 3rd Marine Division headquarters in Dong Ha, which is 7 miles north. The road closed at dark, and we didn't get everything done until an hour and a half after dark. And the captain says, "We got to take it up there." Okay. So I get in a Jeep with my helmet. I had a helmet by then.
Right.
The Marines gave me a helmet.
Well, thank God for the Marines.
Yeah, flak jacket, put my rifle in there, my .45. We grabbed, and he had his pistol and his M16. We get to the gate and they won't let us off. Gate road's closed. You can't go off. And so, having known the base defense commander very well, because he used to come to our club and drink all the time, we be surprised what beer gets you in Vietnam.
I imagine.
But he called him up and he said, "Okay, proceed at your own risk." So I'm motoring up there, nice and kind and slowly, and half a dozen or more what we call green goofballs, green lights come across there.
Those are tracers, right?
Chinese tracers. Now, and plus they were coming from what we call a free kill zone. If it moved on that side of the road, you didn't have to call, you didn't have to ask anybody. You could call an airstrike artillery or shoot it yourself.
Okay.
So these green tracers, green Chinese tracers from a .51 caliber machine gun. So I've always been a pretty good driver. I guess I found out I did things that Jeep wasn't supposed to be able to do. Because the second string of tracers was behind us.
Okay.
And I didn't slow down until we went coming up to the front gate in Dong Ha combat base, and this captain screaming, "Stop, stop." So I think, oh, wait a minute, slammed down the brakes because those Marine gate guards didn't know I was an American in a Jeep. It could have been full of bombs.
Right.
So it took about 4 beers to calm me down.
You didn't drive back that night? You did?
Yeah, but we got in the middle of an armed convoy.
Okay.
We waited around until the nightly convoy went down, and it had, among other things, 5 or 6 gun trucks.
Okay.
And a gun truck is an old deuce and a half
with some quads.
50 caliber up in the roof and 4 M60s, 2 on each side, all armored up.
Okay.
They were nice to be around.
So you felt the return trip was much more pleasant?
Much more pleasant.
So that probably, 4 beers at least to calm you down. At those moments, so what are you, when you're driving and making that Jeep do things that the spec manual says it can't, what are you thinking?
I'm just driving
Just driving.
I'm just driving. I'm not thinking. I wasn't thinking about anything besides looking for the road. I knew the road very well because I went there, and they had a bridge that was a wooden bridge, kind of curved. You came in at an angle, it went straight across the river, and then it went back to another angle. So I had to throw it sideways, and afterwards they told me those Jeeps roll over if we do what I did.
Huh.
I didn't know that.
Helpful to know, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the? So was there that frontal assault, or not frontal assault? Was there any? Was that doomsday report?
No,
Right.
they almost never were.
Right. But on the off chance that they weren't,
On the off chance that it was, you never can tell.
Yeah. Yeah. What's were there times over there that you thought, I'm not going to make it out of this place? Kind
of. Other than that first night in Da Nang, not really.
Okay.
The incident on the road happened so quick, and I had a chance to run like hell.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're over there, what do you miss about home?
Kind of hard to say. Just about everything. Remember, I spent a couple years in England, and people go, "Oh, that's nice and civilized," but you miss things about America, even living in England. And then our military brats network, people talk about in Germany what they missed about the States. I think, I don't know, probably the freedom. You don't, in the military over there in the war zone, you don't really have any freedom.
Yeah.
You've always got an officer, or every officer has an officer on top over him too.
Yeah.
So you don't really have the freedom to say, "Oh, I'm taking the day off," or "I think I'm gonna go fishing,"
Right.
something like that. And there's no safe zone where I was.
Yeah.
Some of the people in Da Nang and Saigons and the big cities could go into the town and go to the night lights and all the famous boom rooms and things like that.
Right. But you couldn't.
No, not in Quang Tri.
So is it when at nighttime? What do you drink? Beer? What do you do?
Yeah, we had a club built.
Okay.
The Marines built a club, and then I helped enlarge it. I got to be the radar of the group. I got to be the head scrounger.
Okay.
And I could get all sorts of things.
You were in charge of procurement.
Procurement about just about anything.
Right.
They had the Armed Forces Network TV show. We could sit and watch TV. We played a lot of poker. We played enough poker that for 2 days, a Marine Lance Corporal and I built a poker table while the captain did my work.
So was that they considered that a good trade?
Oh yeah, it was a great poker table.
Right. Did you, when you're over there, do you have any idea what's going on back home?
Once in a while, we'd get a Stars and Stripes, which would cover some of the stateside, and you could get the nightly news.
Okay.
But you had to be there at the right time.
Yeah. Did you, obviously the sentiment of the war in America, at least portrayed, wasn't good. Did you know about any of that going on back home, or did that?
Not a lot.
Okay.
You would hear some of it, and like I say, Stars and Stripes, when you get one of those, it would have something about it, and the news would have it when you got a chance to watch it.
Yeah. So not a lot of thought given to.
No.
What did you, when you came home, one of the things that I always heard, or that I've heard a lot of vets say, is we always were talking about what we do when we get home. We were always talking about the real world.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you say? When I get home, I'm going to. How did you?
I had 18 months to go in the Army.
Yeah, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm more of the same.
No, when I get home, I got reassigned to St. Louis at the Record Center.
Okay. So
I mean, it wasn't any long-term goals. I'm just going to get out of the Army eventually.
Eventually.
Figure out what I'll do when I grow up.
Yeah, yeah. What's over there? One of the things that people say is that they remember either some of the you talked about the TV shows. Some people remember the music or say, I remember this song or that song, and I can't help but when I hear it, I think that is. Do you have those?
Not that many.
Okay.
Not that many. I had a good friend of mine who was, I think, the 199th Light Infantry, and was a Painted Black.
Yeah, by the Rolling Stones.
And that was their unit song, and every time he hears that one, he'd almost break down crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we never had that.
Yeah. What is when you're over there? What are I think sometimes the sensory. What are the sights or smells, or what can you remember that's really sensory about Vietnam?
Just the smells.
Yeah.
It was just grungy, dirty. The garbage dump whiffing over. Middle of the night, someone getting drunk and throwing a gas grenade around. You learn to sleep with your gas mask on. Just decaying flesh every so often, or decaying meat, whether it's human or water booze would get blown up in the wire or shot down and things like that.
So it's a stinky place.
It's a stinky place, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is it so boring days? It's hard to kill time when you don't have freedom.
Yeah.
So if it's a boring day, that would seem to go really slow.
It did. It did.
Did you get a lot of? Did you get mail? Did you send mail? Was there a lot?
My mother would send me every week or so I'd get a letter. I'd write one back, of course.
Right. Was your father worried? I mean, he'd been in the military.
Probably, but Dad never would show something like that.
Right, because he was in World War II.
World War II, yes.
Yeah, so he didn't necessarily display that kind of fear. Let's talk about what is was Vietnam a good experience for you?
Well, I grew a lot. I always tell people I went over 19 and came back 40.
What do you think changed, or what brought about 21 years of change? See, I can't do math. I'm a journalist.
Yeah. I don't know. We had one operation that I can't say we launched. We gave a lot of information to it. It was called Dewey Canyon 2. It was out in the Ashaw Valley. And I think it was the 4th Marine Regiment hit it with the full helicopter assault. Took 100 casualties in the first 5 minutes.
Wow.
We were right next to the 3rd Med evacuation, big medical complex. And I remember that morning looking out there, and as far as I could see was a string of medevac choppers to the horizon. Must have been a dozen of them, maybe 20 of them. They didn't even bring out the dead for a week. They had no way to move them.
Wow.
They would only haul out the wounded that had a chance to make it, a good chance to make it, a chance to make it, and they would only haul in food, ammo, and replacements.
Okay. That's
and
pretty
you
intense.
kind of go, oh my Lord.
Yeah. 100 casualties in the first 5 minutes.
First 5 minutes.
That's hard to watch.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank God I wasn't there, but just to watch the aftermath come in there and knowing that every one of those choppers probably have 4 wounded guys in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that gets you a different perspective on what the real cost, because seeing that many, even a number, 100, I can think of 100, but to see 100 people or that or more wounded than that. Yeah. Did you have to pull those kind of duties where you went out to be at that, or were you always back behind?
I was I was not allowed to do things like anything. We were a very, very high value target. We all had a price in our head, dead or alive.
Okay.
And so it makes you very paranoid.
Did that? So how do you function with that day by day? Just kind of
just watch your back, as they say.
Does that translate today? I mean, did some of those have
for the longest time? And there's a couple of Facebook sites I'm on with other ex-intelligence people.
Yeah.
And one of the questions one guy asked, 40 years later, do you still look for a tail?
Someone following you.
Yeah. Do you guys, and most of the guys there, the agents who were trained for that said, yeah.
Do you?
No, I wasn't trained that way.
Okay. What were you trained? I mean, how did they train you to at least not be paranoid, but what did they train you that you have to look for? So.
Well, it's just, you learn it yourself real fast, and the people around you will tell you what to do. The first time I ran over a branch in the road, the captain about strangled me. I said, what? He said, that's how they hide their landmines.
So don't run over. Okay.
So 30 years later, I was swerving, changing lanes, not to run over a tin can or a box.
Okay.
It was just ingrained, just like the guys coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, the way they drive. Yeah. And they stop and they look down both ways. And it's something you learn, and it gets ingrained.
And it's a survival.
Yeah.
What what are do you have lasting impacts? Do you say, I think I still carry this because of Vietnam?
Well, you get survivor's guilt. You see, infantry, at least, maybe you shot somebody, maybe you didn't shoot somebody, but you had a chance to do it, and those are my heroes, but, the grunts.
Yeah.
But most of us are what they call REMFs, rear echelon,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so at times you get around these guys and you hear someone talk a little bit about what they went through, and you're going, oh my Lord, how could you do that? How could you, survive that?
Yeah.
At the time, I was worried about what C rations, or something simple.
Right.
But you get survivor's guilt. How come I came back in one piece and 3 other guys that I knew didn't make it?
Yeah.
We had one of the Marine teams. We're going back to Kua Valley, which is a little south of Quezon, back in there where they had headquarters. And it started off life as an American 500-pound bomb that didn't go off. And they fixed it, dug a hole in the ground, put it there, and their Jeep hit it.
Wow.
So
that would have blown it.
Yeah. 3 of the 4 guys in the Jeep were killed. And,
Wow.
when you see them, you hear about it an hour and a half later, 2 hours later, and you say, they were just here 2 hours ago.
That's a hard thing to reconcile. Yeah, they were here and very
were
much
just
talking.
We were there here, and we're talking, and we're shooting craps.
Right.
And just they were getting ready and trying to scrounge anything they could to get back there, to take with them. And boom, they're dead.
Yeah. So it was a kind of a surreal situation. Did you ever wonder, I mean, I know because you traveled around and were a military brat, I get that, but did you ever wonder, was it ever surreal, like, how the heck did I wind up? I'm from the States, and I'm here in this sandy jungle. Did you know?
No, it's one of the things when you take your step forward and put your hand up, you go to do what the government tells you to do.
Okay.
And, it's just kind of, to me, I'd been around the service my entire life.
Right. So it's second nature.
Yeah.
Let's talk about when you decided to when the military decided that you were going to come back stateside. What was leaving Vietnam like?
Oh, I remember. I think the thing that pissed me off more than anything else, we were getting ready to leave at, I think it was Benoit, and it was raining hard. And this guy comes, this private comes on the bus we're on and says, E4 and below, get out and load the airplane. And I was an E5, I was a Spec 5 at the time. And the guy next to me says, give me one of your collar pins. Oh, here, you're now Spec 5 too. They're taking guys who've gotten 2 and 3 Purple Hearts. And because they were a corporal, they were going out in pouring rain to load an airplane so they could leave. When you get all these new guys coming in the country, they could spend a couple days loading an airplane for the guys going home. And that I'll never forget. It really made me mad as hell.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. So you get on a plane, and what are your thoughts when you're getting on the plane?
God, don't let it blow up.
Yeah.
You always have the urban legend, if you want to call it, actually the jungle grapevine about the guy walking out to the Freedom Bird, and here comes a mortar round and blows him away. Or just as they turn to taxi and the pilot starts giving it power, he gets blown up by a VC something or other, and everyone dies, and you just worry. You know it's not going to happen.
Right.
You know it can't happen, but it had happened before.
Yeah. Did you when you're as it got closer to the time you were going to leave, do you get more paranoid that something like that will happen?
Well, you get paranoid about everything. It's just when you short timers are what they call the guys.
Right.
The shorter you get, the more jumpy you get.
Yeah. So when that plane took off, were you flying commercial?
When we broke ground and the rumbling quit, it was pandemonium.
Really?
Everything from full colonels down to privates were screaming and cheering, slapping everyone on the back and just going, oh, thank you, we made it home. We made it out of here.
Yeah. That must have been an unreal feeling. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost, Was it like a whole year of anxiety pent up? Just
Yeah.
yeah. So when did you hit American soil again after that?
Well, we went to Japan,
Okay.
and we spent a couple hours there fueling up. They let us off the plane.
Right. 'Cause
And we flew over to Anchorage,
right.
and we landed over there. And being August, it was still twilight outside, middle of the night.
Yeah.
We froze our asses off.
But you were happy.
Yeah, but we were happy. Then we went down to Fort Lewis, Washington,
Okay.
and they processed out everybody who was getting out early out. You know, most of the draftees, after your one tour in Vietnam, they weren't going to keep you for 3 to 5 months, so they would let them all out.
Okay.
I had another year and a half to go, so
Was that hard to watch them walk free,
No,
or not? Or did you
not
you knew
really.
it? You're just happy to be back
I just happened
stateside.
to be back. And then I get there, and every airline on the West Coast but one is on strike,
Okay.
which is really, really nice.
Yeah.
So I ended up, normally you go military standby or military discount type of thing. So I ended up paying a regular full price fare to fly to Los Angeles. And when we landed in Portland, they upgraded me to first class, which was nice.
Yeah. Were you wearing your
Yes,
uniform?
I was.
Did they give you the directive that some others had not to wear your uniform?
No.
Did you encounter anybody who gave you grief for being military?
Yeah, a little hippie chick in LAX.
What did she say to you?
I can't really remember. Well, it wasn't the big spit on me screaming, but she started, about how many people I'd killed or whatever and type of thing. I kind of stood there a little in awe. And then she spied a Marine with a whole bunch of ribbons and hash marks. So she went after him. I was small potatoes compared to him.
He was a higher value target in the
higher
hip.
value target, yeah.
Right.
He was a lifer with lots of stripes and lots of medals and ribbons and everything else, and he ripped her apart.
Yeah.
He must have been an old drill instructor, because by the time she left quaking.
Wow.
And-
Was that fun to see?
Oh, it was wonderful to see, because the red cap who was there was laughing hard, and he said she comes out there 3 to 4 days a week and does that every day. Every week, 3 to 4 times a week.
Wow. So that's something. It must have been kind of shocking to see, though, too. Because
it was.
It's one thing to hear about it or kind of know it. It's another thing to see it face to face.
Yeah.
What's back in Vietnam? What do you remember about Saigon?
Not a real lot, because mostly the compound. We just we stayed on the compound. I really wasn't allowed off, and a couple times we went off to fill sandbags, which was no fun.
I've heard a lot about filling sandbags. I'm convinced half the war was spent filling sandbags.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And believe me, you want those sandbags.
Yeah, for protection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's the so after you came back, you went to St. Louis? I mean, you went down to see your family, right?
Yeah.
Well, that must have been a good homecoming to go down and see family.
Well, let's see. My dad was out of town because my brother had graduated from University of Wyoming. My plane got diverted from Riverside to Ontario. My luggage went to Catalina Island.
Not helpful.
Not helpful. So I stood around the airport for 2.5 hours while my mother finally found out where I was at to come and pick me up and drive me way back there. And, you go. And I had exactly what I was wearing, because I'd gained weight in Vietnam. I was so underweight before I went over there.
Really?
Yeah, I was about 135 pounds when I went over there and came back about 155.
Okay.
So none of my clothes fit either. And the only clothes I had was going to Catalina Island.
It sounds like a comedy of errors.
Oh, yeah. I had a really, really fun time with things like that.
So it leads me to the question: if you gained weight, so you weren't always eating sea rations?
No.
Because you're on more of a base.
Yeah, we were on a large base. Technically, I used to eat at the 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marine Mess Hall.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they had a mess sergeant when I first got there who had what he thought was a foolproof retirement plan. He'd take the month's rations, sell half of them on the black market, and make do with the rest. Only for what they call the 1, 2, 3s. Privates, lance corporals, PFCs, the ones who wouldn't squawk. Typical meal there, if you got there early, you got a fork. There were no knives. If you got there later, you had 2 spoons to eat with. There were no metal trays. They were gone, but you had the heavy glass china Navy issue plates. Weren't no glasses, just a china coffee mug. Drinks was normally lime, pre-sweetened lime Kool-Aid, because not even the Vietnamese would touch that.
Yeah,
that
so
your life.
No, but I remember some drinks. So you're not a big fan of lime Kool-Aid?
No, especially that pre-sweetened stuff with saccharin. And the food was absolutely horrible. And then one day, about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, a new assistant division general came. And it's lunchtime, so we got in line behind a private, went through their line, ate everything, checked around a little bit, and they hauled that son of a bitch off in chains. We cheered. Then we started getting good food.
Wow.
But for a while there, for almost a month and a half, I didn't bother going to the mess hall.
So how'd you eat?
We had a Vietnamese we called Papa San. He used to work in the compound for us. He'd sweep things up and do odd jobs. We'd send him to town sometime to buy things. The Marines were much more capable of driving around, so they'd go into town and buy things. Got to know several real mess sergeants. And since we had the one thing that they didn't have, we had a club. And a club that over there, your NCO clubs, your privates, 1, 2, 3 clubs, opened at like 6 o'clock at night, closed at 10. They normally had a 2 or 3 beer maximum. Ours opened when the first person walked in the door in the morning and closed when the last person left. And when you were considered a membership, you were put your chalk mark up next to your name, and you settled up every month or whenever we went to the beer point to buy more beer for the place. So we would get some stuff.
Right. So you're able to serve, but you were surviving that way.
Oh yeah.
Huh. But once a real mess sergeant got in, you got decent food?
Oh yeah, yeah. Thanksgiving, I always remember we had turkey, real turkey, roast beef, shrimp cocktail, milk, everything, potatoes and dressing, and the high quality stayed up there the rest of my time there.
That's better than some.
Yeah.
Some stories. So when you came back stateside after you visited your parent, after your mom finally found you, was that a happy time to go back home and to be back stateside?
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of bored because I didn't really know any. It's Riverside.
Yeah, you hadn't grown.
2 weeks before that, a year before I'd been there for 2 weeks. I knew one person, really.
Right.
So it was kind of boring.
Right.
I went out and played golf and found a car, and then I drove around a lot.
Right. What's then where did the Army and its infinite wisdom see fit to send you?
I went to the Military Records Center in St. Louis.
Okay. What were you doing there?
Security checks. Anybody who, since there were at the time, I forget how many millions of records there, and anybody who wanted to go to work, who needed a security clearance, our job was to get a hold of their service record and review it to make sure they were good boys good boys or girls when they were in the service.
Okay.
Which was interesting because when you open up a record, the thicker they are, the more oh my God factor.
Okay.
You look at this guy and you go, been in for 6 years. It's 15 pounds. Uh-oh.
He's not going to make it.
He wasn't a good boy. You open it up. I remember one I opened up, and there is sentenced to be hung by the neck until dead for 2 murders.
Wow.
And whoa, is this the right Social Security number, the right name, the right service number, everything? And you go through, he got commuted and he got pardoned and everything else, but
wow.
Then I opened up another one, and there is a citation for the Medal of Honor signed by Richard Nixon.
Huh. That one's probably a little bit better.
Yeah.
Easier to clear one than the other?
Yeah.
Was that interesting work?
Yes, it was at times. It was kind of funny, too. It's like I had one record, and you look at it and you go, John Eisenhower. Oh, okay. Name sounds kind of familiar. Mother, Mamie Eisenhower. Father, Dwight. Yeah.
Wow.
It's the president's son.
But his records are in there with everyone.
Yeah, he was a full.
When all of those, there are so many records. Does the Army have a good way of finding those records?
The civilians take care of them.
Okay.
That's even worse because when they had the fire in '76, they lost 14 or 15 million of them.
Right. That's a lot of paperwork.
A lot of paperwork. The thing would be, the building, I think, was probably about 3 times the size of the Metra in 6 stories.
Huge.
Huge.
Just massive. What's the, well, I mean, you were a clerk. You type things in triplicate, right?
Not anymore.
Right. What's the, tell me about the, then after the Army, what did you do then?
Oh, I came up to Montana because my brother, when he got out of college, had decided to open up a fast food restaurant here in town.
Okay.
With my father's backing, so I got kind of blackmailed to come up and help.
Family business?
Yeah. Dad was still stationed in California at the time. He later got transferred, and about a month later got transferred to Mountstrom,
Okay.
where we finally retired from. So I kind of got blackmailed to come up here. We ran a taco place on 24th Street. It's long gone for 6 or 7 years. And
Right.
sold carpeting, a few things like that, and kind of drifted into being a mechanic and specializing in import because I've always been a foreign car guy and been doing it ever since.
What so from military intelligence to mechanics, that's interesting. Did you ever have any problem kind of getting on with your life once you got out?
Once in a while, everyone who served in Vietnam, I don't care whether you're a cook or an infantryman, comes back with some shade of PTSD. We didn't know what it was called back then.
Right.
But there are, things that would set you off.
Yeah. Did you did friends or family members say you'd changed?
My brother said I was crazy before I went over there, so no.
So it's, I mean, may have traded one form for another, but yeah.
But you have to realize too that I hadn't really seen my family in so many years, because when I left college, after my senior year of high school, I went to college, worked that summer away from there, then went in the Army.
Yeah.
And being an Air Force family, I last saw one of my cousins in 1965. That's the last time.
Yeah. So it was kind of a transient nature. What's your being a mechanic? What's your favorite automobile to work on?
Probably Hondas and Subarus.
Why?
Well, Subarus are pretty straightforward.
Okay.
They're getting more and more complicated, but still they're kind of straightforward. They don't let the engineers go crazy like they do in most of German cars.
Okay. Honda's the same reason?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the when you look back at the now, I mean, we're kind of celebrating 50, not celebrating, but commemorating. Celebrating is probably the wrong word.
Yeah.
Commemorating 50 years from Vietnam since we committed combat troops. We had advisors there before, but 50 years. What do you, when you look at 50 years or kind of back at that, how do you look at the Vietnam War now that you've had some time pass?
After reading more of the basic history of the Vietnamese people into that era, I want to say, what were they thinking? There's no way they could have ever done anything. Vietnam has been a war with somebody for 1,500 years. The Chinese, the Cambodians, the Laotians, everybody. They're a fiercely independent people. And what I found out, very dedicated too, obviously.
Yeah. So you were receiving intelligence that had to do, I imagine, with both the North Vietnamese and also the Viet Cong.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of witness firsthand these different fighting forces. What were your thoughts because even though you're just typing and transmitting information, you had to be thinking about what you were reading. What do you remember thinking about the Viet Cong or the NVA? Well,
the NVA, you'd watch on the report of a company here or more of a company, and sometimes some trucks where there should never been a truck ever got in there, but those SOBs built a road under the canopy and things like that. And you just go, oh, these guys are tough as nails.
Yeah.
They are tough as nails. Yeah. And the VC that we found, we didn't care too much about their combat forces, the PLF, the Popular Liberation Front, for their armed ones. We were looking for their cadre, Their
Okay.
recruiters, especially their tax collectors.
Right.
And
So
every-
you're looking at their operatives.
Yeah, they're opposite. The ones that the cadres, the important guys, the high mucky mucks. And a couple times there's a few less tax collectors out there than there used to be.
Was it when you were going after things like people like that? Was that exciting, or is that?
Well, it was interesting. At least we always wanted to know what came about from our information. And the major, finally, we started sending out some after-action reports, trying to get some information back from the sorted counter our equals in different units, the S2s and G2s of the units. And we get back maybe 50% of them if we were lucky.
Okay.
And we did this for about the last 7 months I was there. We had our McNamara was always good on body count, so was what's-his-face. So our body count was a little over 800
Okay.
that they contributed to us having helped them do.
Okay. So I get where you're going.
Yeah.
Does it when you got those back, was it a good feeling? Because I imagine it would be kind of hard you're working kind of in a vacuum. You don't know what's helpful and what's not.
Yeah, it was helpful. It made it feel like you were actually doing something rather than just taking a pile of papers here, putting a pile of papers there, and then tomorrow putting it back again.
Right.
So I was doing something.
Right. So one of the things, I guess, every time I see anything with intelligence, it's all a lot of spy and not as much typing. There was a lot of typing there.
A lot of typing on my part.
You talk about you've been active in veterans groups and really an advocate, and I appreciate that. When you talk to people about Vietnam, what do you most often tell them, and what are some of the questions they ask?
Well, it's not anymore. It's most people don't even ask a question about Vietnam anymore
Why, do you think?
because I think too many of them are ashamed of it. And most of the younger people they saw something about it on TV.
Okay.
And the people my age, I remember my 20th high school reunion, I think it was. I went down there, one of my best friends from there, and he goes, oh, I volunteered for the draft. I said, right. That means you gave up your student deferment because you had this really super high number and they wouldn't touch you.
Right.
Don't tell me you volunteered for the draft. Otherwise, you would have been drafted.
Right.
So, things like that. That was their guilt on it. And a lot of times you have people who will come up to me and will talk about, I didn't go. I said, good. You didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
Believe me, that's a party you want to stay out of.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing I always tell people, though. I wore this shirt, Vietnam veteran, and people come up and say, well, thank you for your service. Wait a minute. First of all, we didn't have much choice.
Right.
Either you were drafted, or like me, I wasn't going to wait for the draft. I was going to be in one way or the other.
Right.
So I enlisted as opposed to waiting around 3 or 4 months or 5 months and be drafted. I just asked them, just say welcome home.
Yeah. You never really got that, I imagine.
No, we never did. We
Yeah.
never will.
Did your dad ever communicate? I mean, I imagine that's a legacy you share, the military. Was that something that he appreciated about?
Well, he was really, really mad that I joined
Okay, why?
because he didn't want me to go through what he went through.
Okay.
And when I was married to my very first wife, we ended up buying houses about 5 houses apart out in the Heights.
Okay.
Same week, didn't know about it. Now, I bought a new house on this road. Well, we did too. Okay. But, and then later on, Dad and I went back to racing sports cars. Dad would help me, and we went to a couple of assorted veterans of things, and we started talking, and he actually told me things about the war. He never even told my mother.
Huh.
After he was killed in a plane crash in 85. And afterwards, I was talking to her a couple years later, and he never told me that. He never told me that.
Huh.
It's because we had a bond because of as they said in the Civil War, we saw the elephant.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that that's the bond that? Do you share that bond with any veteran?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is
I don't care whether they're Navy, Coast Guard. If they were there, we have a bond.
Okay.
That's why we call them brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you hope? You know, one of the reasons I can say that we're doing this and I'm personally doing this is because I believe that the value in getting these stories isn't just today or, 2015, but in 2065 when they're saying, okay, 100 years ago, they're not going to have many people who can say I was there and I did that. What do you want them to remember about Vietnam?
Well, it was a bad war. It was run over by politicians, not generals. And politicians don't It was so bad that Johnson would sit in the White House and plot an airstrike. Half a world away.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Things change. The military generals are trained to do what generals are trained to do. I mean, they know they're going to lose troops. They don't try to, they don't want to. But sometimes a high-value target or something that has to be done, someone's got to go in and do it.
Yeah.
That's why they have 19-year-old kids out there. If there's a bunch of 45-year-old guys in the infantry, we'd go, hey, let's sit down and have a beer. Let's talk about this, okay? Now, I'll tell you what, I'll swap you.
Right. That's why they're 19, right?
That's why they're 19. They're young, dumb, and invincible.
Yep. Did you believe the same about yourself?
Yep.
Yeah. What did you learn good things from Vietnam? Did any good for you come of it?
Well, I always tell people that the Marine Corps taught me to cook.
Yeah.
I've become a very, very good cook.
So Marines are good cooks.
No, their food is horrible. I was living with them because I had to eat their food. I learned to cook.
Okay, this is the kind of stuff we need to preserve.
I say the Marine Corps taught me how to cook. I wasn't a cook, and I wasn't in the Marines.
But you gained weight over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you learn how to cook well?
Well, I became famous for my fried chicken.
Okay. How do you fry chicken in Vietnam?
Well, remember when I said we had agents, undercover civilians?
Yeah.
One of them worked for what they call the U.S. AIDS, which is the U.S. aid in developing countries.
Okay.
He had all sorts of stuff. We ended up with a nice gas stove converted over propane, 500-pound propane bottle, 2 freezers, 2 refrigerators.
That's one heck of a club.
If you know the right people with the right, a little whiskey, a little beer, plywood sometimes, depending on what they want, and you get all sorts of things.
You were in procurement, I forgot.
Yes, I was in procurement.
Very good.
We literally built a galley on behind our that's how the club expanded. We built a galley back there and put all the cooking equipment back in there.
So you learned how to fry chicken, which...
Yeah, I started frying chicken, and I remember one night, Monday, Tuesday, didn't matter. There was all Saturday nights over there because you could work in the same day. Next day you're going to work.
Right.
So we were up late one night, and the major said, gosh, I sure could go for some fried chicken. And I said, well, Major, I'm sorry, but we're out of shortening. I can't fry any. 2 lieutenants got up and went around to the Seabees that we knew, their mess hall, because one of their night bakers was a good friend of ours, came back with a tub of lard, or tub of shortening, and said, here. So I cooked fried chicken for 5 hours. They got on the phone, they called all sorts of people in.
And you just kept frying chicken.
Just kept frying chicken.
So you become so that was at least one good thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
You learned, and probably in some pretty at times primitive condition. Although for fried chicken you just need some lard, some flour, and chicken, right?
When I first got there, we were living in tents.
Okay.
And then, just about the 1st of September, 1968, Typhoon Betty hit us.
What'd that do to you?
Well, the tents were well sandbagged in. They had blast walls that were 6 feet tall all the way around and strapped down to beat hell. But luckily, the eye was north of us, so we caught only 70-mile-an-hour winds. It was just a Class 1 or Category 1. But after the first day, the canvas just slowed the rain down.
Okay.
It dumped, I don't know how many feet of rain on us. And since we were on the lowland by the ocean, everything to the west is up to the highlands and the mountains, all, of course, came downhill.
Sounds like a real mess.
It was a real mess. And after the storm broke, I'd only been up there for about a week or a little less, and they said, guess what, you're going to go to the garbage dump because we accumulated two Jeep trailers full of garbage instead of one. So we'll take 2 Jeeps. So the Marine I'm riding with, he's going down, and this one guy goes down the road, and he turns off. He says, "Where you going?" I said, "I know a shortcut." We go up to the road, and about a third of the way down on the other side of the hill, this gully is full of water. A little canvas top sticking out of it, and there's a guy walking down there carrying it from a wrecker with a big steel cable, going to drag it up. And this guy starts, "Oh, look, some idiot drove off the road in his Jeep." He starts to drive in. I say, "Stop! Look, what? That's a deuce and a half, and it's on the road." That gully was 40 feet deep, and it was full of water.
Wow. So just cut a new channel.
It was just water everywhere. In fact, the compound flooded so bad that we had almost a foot of water over everything.
Did you have, so you're living out of tents and stuff, it's pretty primitive, crude condition. Do you have to worry, some people said they never got used to the nights there, whether it was mortar, whether it was the bugs. What was a night in Vietnam like?
Well, about 3 degrees cooler than the day normally.
So hot?
Still hot, still humid.
Right.
Only good thing was at night the traffic, because like I said, we were right next to Highway 1. Traffic wasn't there anymore, so you could almost sleep. Bugs were everywhere.
Right.
And frankly, there wasn't anything we do about mortars or rockets. They're going to drop it on us. They're going to drop us on them. I was right in the middle of a combat base, with over a mile in any direction was somebody, our country. So
right.
I wasn't worried about someone sneaking up and throwing a hand grenade at me or anything else like that.
Right, because you'd hear them coming in.
They'd have to infiltrate past half a division of Marines.
Right.
Navy, Seabees, everything else.
Okay. So.
And if they're going to drop a rocket on you, they only hit us about 10 or 12 times.
Okay.
The time I was there.
So yeah, they were around you, but not.
They were around there, but they weren't upset with us enough to drop them on us all the time. I know a couple of people on fire bases, they had that many incomings in a week. Right. Did you, have you ever been back to Vietnam? No.
Do you have any desire to?
No, not really.
Okay.
Everything I was around is all gone.
Okay.
I used to have, I don't know how it disappeared, but Google Earth disappeared off my computer and I can't get it back. But I can go back and look exactly where I was living at, and it's just a flat piece of ground. You can see where the old airstrip used to be.
Right.
And that's about it.
So yeah, nothing to see there.
Nothing to see.
Yeah. What when you speak to people today, do you think people's attitudes about Vietnam are changing?
Yeah.
Over time? Yeah.
Yeah, especially after our little sandbox wars that we got into over in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're starting to realize that a lot of us sacrifice an awful lot.
Yeah. Do you think we're treating veterans better today coming home?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
They're a lot better. I mean, they have the higher the vet. I couldn't get a job when I came back.
Why?
I was one of those baby-killing drug users.
Oh, you're crazy, right?
And crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't be trusted. I could go crazy all the time.
And
it was,
I mean, I'm not laughing, but it's
Vietnam vets were not well thought of. When they had a meeting in the early mid-'80s about building a Texas-Vietnam memorial, the 2 guys who were ramrodding it were Vietnam veterans, combat. They had Purple Hearts and medals out the yin-yang. And they're up there talking to the press. And they're wearing suits, carrying briefcases. And the press says, "Oh, no, we want to talk to the Vietnam vets." They went to the back that looked like a bunch of ex-bikers. They were all vets, but they were the tripwires, as we call them, the guys that far out. They were the real vets.
A lot of one of the things that we've heard from a lot of folks is, reentry wasn't easy, but they got on and they started living, trying to reassemble their life and just move on. Was that was that for you?
After a while, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get back out of it. Unfortunately, we've lost so many of our are guys from,
Yeah.
their names aren't on the wall, but they died because of the war,
Yeah.
either through a suicide or Agent Orange.
Yeah. How did you kind of rebuild your life?
I don't know if I ever really rebuilt. I never had much of a life to build to begin with. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, you know, the strong family and everything else, because we've never had that. We've never had a, you know, my whole family has always been my two brothers, my sister, and my parents.
Yeah.
And that was my whole family group.
Right.
So you're kind of independent off of that thing.
Yeah.
And you move so long and you move around. It just, you try to find someone with a common interest, and you get together and you have fun.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've said to everybody here, and so if you've listened to some of these, for folks who have, I always say the same thing. I'm trying to condense, with every veteran, years of experience into the one short interview.
Yeah.
And that's probably foolish in a certain respect. But we've talked a lot tonight about your experiences. Is there anything that I've missed? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot I've missed, but anything important to you about your story and experience, or anything that I've missed?
Well, not really. There's a lot of good, you know, there were a lot of good things happened over to me. Met some fine people.
What's the best memory you have from Vietnam?
Probably my CO,
Okay.
Major Emmett K. McMahon from Texas.
I like the name.
Yeah, the third. I know, I used to type that out all the time. Emmett K. McMahon III, Major, USMI.
Okay, tell me about Emmett.
Major Mac he was a good character, father figure almost. You know, he must have liked me. He promoted me out of the zone twice. I made Spec 5 in 13 months. Most people were barely making PFC, so he liked me. Of course, I worked hard too. I remember on one of my runs to assorted PXs, Camp Red Devil, which was next to us, 1st Brigade of the 5th Mechanized Infantry, U.S. Army. And he said, why don't you go over there and see what they got? You haven't been there in a couple of weeks. So I went over and I came back and I said, nothing new, just a whole bunch of canned old El Paso stuff. And he said, what? Got in the Jeep with me, we drove over, and there was no basket, so he's loading me up with armfuls of canned tortillas and refried beans and enchiladas. He's from Texas,
right.
West Texas.
Right.
So he goes back there and he said, I'm going to teach you how to cook Tex-Mex now.
Right, and did he?
Yeah, taught me a little bit.
Okay.
And he's also where he taught me to make my first pot of chili.
Yeah.
I'm a lifetime member of the International Chili Society.
Okay, so that's where
I have gone to the World Cook-Off.
Oh, that's great.
So I've qualified and gone to the World Cook-Off.
So, and that starts with Emmett K. McMahon III.
Yeah, Major Mac.
Major Mac.
Major Mac.
And he, and so and you spent a lot of time with him because he's the major there, right? He's
well, that was
you're one too.
The office, the back half of the office was his living quarters, and I was on the far side of the compound. So, and I was the only enlisted person there. And towards the last half of the tour, there were just the 2 Army guys, him and me. The rest were Marines.
Wow. And so
we were kind of moochers. we were an orphan outfit that didn't have a place to live, and they took us in. I guess before I got there, they took us in, and that's why we paid them back with all the things we get hold of.
So, so Marines will take pity on.
Oh yeah.
They took some
when because we were undercover as the 40th Communications outfit. 40th Communications. I don't know what we were supposed to have been doing or anything else.
To communicate, but you were.
I'd have a phone call from when someone wanted the radio fixed, and I had to make up a story why we couldn't fix the radio. We don't do that. We're a monitoring service. What do you monitor? I'm sorry, we can't tell you that. Click. But because of that, the major appointed me Club NCO.
Right.
Typed up the papers. I typed it up for him, and he signed it. I could take that to the beer point, and I could buy the beer. The Marines couldn't, because they were part of a larger unit, and the larger unit had its own club. So that's the club they had to go to.
So you're a member of your own club.
Oh, so yeah, we had the club, and so they loved us because we could buy the beer, and they couldn't buy it.
How much beer could a Jeep hold?
Well, Jeep trailer will take a pallet of beer.
Okay. It's a lot of beer.
Yeah.
But not a lot of good beer.
Well, anything cold was good.
Right.
You got a choice of two things to drink: warm, over-chlorinated water, or cold, mediocre beer. Now, what are you going to take?
The mediocre beer is still beer.
Yeah, and it's still cold.
Yeah, and it's cold.
Operative word, cold.
If it's cold enough, you don't care. Yeah. This is so it wasn't all bad. There was some fried chicken and cold beer.
Cold beer, yeah. And, a few interspaced with few seconds of terror. My entire tour condensed down was probably 3 minutes worth of an infantryman's nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, those guys are my heroes. Those guys went through hell, and I know an awful lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. That is absolutely true. Well, I just want to say, on behalf of the Gazette and everyone else, thank you for sharing your story. And if you haven't heard it, welcome home.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. This is Daryl Ehrlich, and I've been with Kurt Schulz tonight on Vietnam Voices.